I've spoken a lot on this channel about the late 90s and early 2000s phenomenon of websites belonging to weird guys. My here, hello my future girlfriend, the icy hot stuntas. And just a few weeks ago I spoke about websites that were imitating that format for marketing purposes. But the thing is, very few of these websites wound up being maintained for a very long time. And a lot of the people behind them seemingly vanished as soon as they appeared. Not the case for a man named Randy Constant, or as you may know him, the living Peter Pan. And unlike a lot of living memes, especially of that time period, Randy was able to keep his story going with mainstream television appearances and by curating a dedicated fan base throughout the years. One that persists to this very day. So for today's video, we're off to Never Neverland with the boy who never grew old. This video is sponsored by Helix. Helix makes premium mattresses and bedding custom fit to your needs and shipped straight to your door, with free shipping in the US. Everyone sleeps differently, so Helix has you take a sleep quiz to determine which of their 20 unique mattresses works for you. I'm a side sleeper, so Helix set me up with their Sunset mattress. Comes rolled up in a box and it's easy to set up. And if you want to upgrade your mattress but you aren't ready for a whole new mattress yet, Helix also offers a line of mattress toppers. Additionally, all Helix mattresses are fiberglass free. Even the facilities they're made in contain no fiberglass. People tend to spend more time in bed during the colder months, and quality sleep is tied to better immunity, making this the best time to get a new Helix mattress. I've been sleeping in a Helix mattress now for years, and it's some of the best sleep I've gotten. And to make sure you're happy with your new Helix mattress, they offer a 100 nights of sleep trial. Thank you to Helix for sponsoring this video. Go to helixsleep.com/wang to take advantage of their fall savings event. You'll get 20% off your order. When I think of the phrase real-life Peter Pan, the first thing that comes to mind for me is this deli owner I knew from Queens. His name was literally Peter Pan, and one time he told me that if your father's Korean, you're full Korean. But after that, when I hear of real-life Peter Pan, I think of Randy Constant, specifically his MySpace page, although honestly that might have been a person impersonating him. But in any case, his internet presence begins well before MySpace, with a website called pixieland.org. It was originally much more basic, but grew into what Randy referred to as a vanity page. Just look at all the virtual glitter and low-res star and pixie gifs. And in this state, it's been preserved to this day in all of its Web 1.0 glory. A place where Randy felt free to express himself and find like-minded souls, potential new friends, the lost boys of the internet, people who believe in magic and diversity, all while looking to have some fun. 2 weeks into launching Pixieland, Randy would go from obscurity to having a top 10 personal homepage ranking on Yahoo Australia and New Zealand. And after just 2 months, 500,000 page viewers. People around the world, from forum trolls to MIT faculty, were passing around photos of Randy Constant. And I mean, just look at what he was posting. How could they not be intrigued? By 18 months in, you had 3.2 million people looking at his page. Who was this man, and why did he take Peter Pan's challenge of never growing up as a personal challenge? Growing up in the 60s and 70s influenced Randy's outlook on life. He liked to dress somewhat androgynously and had a particular affinity for bright colors. As Randy once put it, he felt a calling from a left brain and a right brain. The girl's side caring about hair and clothes, and the guy's side that didn't care. One side of him just wanted to play music and design software and gadgets, and the other side wanted to sew and make costumes. Unfortunately, this society has all but defined the gender boundaries, especially the rules dictating what boys should or should not enjoy, yes, girls too. Yet little girls are often praised for interest in boyish activities, while boys who do the opposite are seldom tolerated. He shared these thoughts with his parents as young as 8 years old, and while most parents, especially back then, might be taken aback, it seemed like he actually had a really good relationship with his parents.
I think I was about 8 when I told my dad, I'd like to be a fairy. He probably wondered what kind of a child I was going to be.
In an article by the Palm Beach Post, Randy shares his fondness for his father Roy, who had passed 7 years prior, and it seemed like he had the perfect upbringing for embracing childlike wonder throughout his entire life. You see, his father Roy was a toy designer, just like Stu Pickles. But tragedy struck Andy very early in life. His mother Florence took her own life when he was just 12 years old. Roy Constant would shield his son from knowing the truth about this until he was 20. He told me it was an intestinal blockage, and I bought it. But despite her very early death, Florence wound up playing a pivotal role in Randy's life. She's the one who introduced him to Peter Pan, the actual book which Randy considers more canon than the Disney take. Randy was drawn to the idea of Peter Pan, a boy fairy who never grows up. And when Randy turned 20, he decided to take this further. Why not just go around dressed like Peter Pan? Who cares what anyone will think? Embrace his lighter side. Life is tough enough. Who does it harm if he wants to live his life for himself? Besides, he's a born and bred New Yorker. He's been dealing with people talking shit his whole life growing up in Staten Island.
You know, past a certain point, Martin, I'm a New York fairy. I don't take any shit.
I gotta say, I never would have expected this dude to sound like that. Randy would go to college for only 2 years before getting a grown-up job.
I've worked designing software and electronics for
Randy,
the electric utility industry for some 25, 30 years.
He also enjoyed inventing gadgets, but at heart, his real job is that of being an eternal child. Those early working years would be at Con Edison. In his interview with Conan O'Brien, Randy says that most of his coworkers were actually cool with him wearing his outfits to work.
Oh wait, and there you are at work. Is that you at work?
That's me working at home now. Yes, I've been confined.
That's you. Please remain at home.
Although in another interview, he would note that he didn't wear his outfits every single day. Sometimes it would just be maybe a green V-neck. Can you imagine though, you're at work one day trying to debug some hardware issue, and they got this guy sitting there looking like he's about to swashbuckle with Captain Hook? So eventually they just let him work from home. I could picture someone hearing that, watching this video, and being like, wait, that's a great idea. I can almost picture George Costanza coming up with that plan. Like many New Yorkers, Randy would eventually move to Florida, Tampa specifically. As he notes, New York is too freaking cold. It's clear that Randy's a man who's lived many lives, and an article by the Tampa Bay Times in 2001 would shed some light on them. Before fully leaning into the Peter Pan persona, Randy had some troubled teen years and he was deep into a party lifestyle. He eventually finds himself on the wrong end of a bad acid trip, and he joins a cult. At the same time, he's confused about his sexuality. He considers himself to be a mixed gender person, and this is the 70s before every single person had heard of a non-binary person. So he's not even really sure what that feeling entails. Looking for answers, he winds up at the Identity Help Center in Greenwich Village looking for answers. This is a support center focused on LGBTQ issues. I had on this real short shirt tied around my midriff and velvet hot pants, Constance says. I walked into this place and said, hey, I like girls, but I like to dress like this. The counselor looks up and says, New York is a big place, buddy. The world is even bigger. You'll find somewhere you'll fit in. Constance decided God liked him the way he was. He hasn't seen a therapist since. Of course, Randy wasn't the only one confused about his orientation. Not even his eventual wife was convinced at first.
You know, you're a straight girl, he's got to be gay.
Which is all okay by Randy. I've never had any physical attractions to anything but girls. Strange though, I consider myself to have a strong feminine side, and have often thought of myself as a boy lesbian. His eccentric friends agree that Randy has a strong feminine energy. That's something most men are afraid to show. Although the femininity of the Peter Pan character was important to Randy, perhaps the bigger part of it was of course the fact that Peter Pan doesn't age. He's eternally youthful, something that Randy aimed to achieve.
Look at me, I'm 50 years old and I'm still Peter Pan.
He's got a full head of hair and is vain enough to watch his weight. I mean, look at those biceps. Clearly it's the gym. He might be Peter Pan, but at heart he's still a bro from Staten Island. He wouldn't even acknowledge his real age.
50 years old, very youthful 50.
I don't count that second digit anymore. I just turned 5.
You just turned 5. Okay.
So he celebrates each decade as a single year.
I'm 5 years old at heart, but the state of Florida says I'm 54.
You could party with Randy from time to time at the local Ren Fair, where you'll also notice that he's quite the musician, and he plays a lot more than just the lute. He's a one-man band who's played music for most of his life with influences including King Crimson, Pink Floyd, the Moody Blues, and the Beatles. He even sells his own original music on his website, like one about Peter Pan hooking up with Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Look at that album, I mean, how could you say no? You can even get it with a signed autograph for $14. Maybe you can get a stylish Be a Pixie tee. It all helped to keep the website running. Web hosting was expensive, and this man was getting millions of views. And he also donated 20% of each sale into kids' charities. So Randy Constant's Pixieland site was getting a ton of traffic, and in 2001, Pixieland.org would even win a Webby Award for Best Weird Site. He celebrated by kissing Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz in front of Andy Grove, the former Intel chairman, but not all of the attention he was getting was positive. He'd also get the attention of sites like Losers.org, which tracked, as they put it, the internet's biggest losers. The way they put it, he frightens children and disturbs adults nationwide. And he would occasionally get hate mail like this one that he shared with the Palm Beach Post. If I lived next door to you, I'd burn a cross in your yard and then I'd blow your head off with a shotgun. He paraphrases. I'd send those to the police. That's the person we need to be afraid of, not a guy who dresses like Peter Pan.
Those people that hate you for enjoying yourself, they're not going to give you back the years that you would have wasted not doing the things you wanted to do.
He'd also get messages from gay men who were mad that he said he only liked women. He'd respond to those guys by saying, "You've been fooled by people pushing stereotypes on you. What does it matter?" During this time, he was also getting contacted by media outlets looking to do a story on him. Randy would often agree to appear, but he wanted two things. He wanted them to plug his website, and eventually he would start to ask for a $200 donation. The donation would help with his web hosting costs, and the remainder would be given to children's charities. He didn't always have this rule. It was added after his bad experience with the VH1 show Totally Obsessed. The show was hosted by Fred Willard, who in this episode would mock Randy and his lifestyle.
Randy Constant is a 50-year-old man who likes to skip around in green leotards. He's totally obsessed with being Peter Pan.
Now, Randy was self-aware enough to know that a show like this was going to make jokes at his expense, and he didn't really mind it that much. But what he didn't like was VH1 spreading lies about his personal life.
Randy's not just Peter Pan at home, he's Peter Pan everywhere, even though that's caused him to lose a job and his 20-year marriage.
Both of which, of course, were not true. They also promised that it would be an overall positive portrayal and that they'd feature his website. These were also lies. Additionally, they agreed to make a $200 charitable donation, which, as you may have guessed, also didn't happen. Eventually, thanks to a lawyer, VH1 would edit future replays with a new voiceover omitting the lies, and they would donate $200 to the Make-A-Wish Foundation on his behalf. Randy may have a childlike persona, but he's not an idiot and he knows how these media companies play ball. That being said, I didn't want to sit here and talk about how VH1 broke his rules all while kind of doing the same thing, so I spoke to him over email. He told me that he reserved the donation request for big media companies that were going to demand a lot of his time. If you've worked on any shows like this, you know that even a few minutes of footage will take up an entire day or more. So he told me not to feel obligated to do it, but I gave $200 to the Make-A-Wish Foundation in his honor. His self-awareness with media companies was also why he didn't want to go on the Howard Stern show. He knew how that would go, and he didn't want to be the next whackpacker. In any case, he was a better fit for shows like Conan O'Brien, where they had a playful, fun rapport. And he did appear on a lot of talk shows. In April of 2003, the real-life Peter Pan had himself a big week in Hollywood. He was the third guest on the Jimmy Kimmel Show with an eccentric cast of characters. This time the couch would be Randy, Malibu's most wanted Jamie Kennedy, and Bret Hart's favorite worker, Bill Goldberg. Bill Goldberg didn't seem to know what to make of Randy, but he wasn't there for Randy. He was there to have a pillow fight with Jimmy's cousin Sal. As Bret Hart may have predicted though, with Bill Goldberg being such an unsafe worker, it was inevitable that Randy would find himself on the wrong side of a pillow swing. But Randy was a soldier, and the next day he would find himself at the pilot taping for Steve Harvey's new show. Although the audience seemed to know Randy and reacted well to him, Steve didn't really get the whole real-life Peter Pan thing. In fact, Randy said that despite his staff doing their research, Steve seemed completely unprepared and knew nothing about him or his website. And then on July 16th of 2004, Randy is back in New York as a guest for Conan O'Brien. On top of how peculiar and attention-grabbing the real-life Peter Pan character is, Randy just has this natural charisma that makes people want to follow him around with a camera, documenting this man's daily life. He wasn't that hard to find, as one journalist was able to find him at the local Lettuce Lake Park, wearing his bright green lycra playing on the monkey bars, accompanied by a woman dressed as a pixie. But please don't film him in his private state of play. That was something he'd request in the writers when he booked a show. And you know, these days I often see it said that in general in life, people tend to act more reserved because they know that everyone's got a camera in their pocket and they don't want to be embarrassed in front of everyone. So it's very forward thinking that Randy was able to identify that problem even way back then. Of course, the real life Peter Pan doesn't just play. As you said before, he likes to party. He's a boy who loves the nightlife. But after his 20-plus year marriage ended, he was dying for his own Tinkerbell to spend these lonely nights with. Or as he called them, Tinks. Sometimes, though, he was looking for love in the wrong places. He told the Tampa Bay Times that he'd often go to lesbian bars because straight bars didn't want a man dressed up as a fairy. But then, he winds up attracted to the lesbians, and if you've ever listened to Pinkerton by Weezer, you know that doesn't work out. So if the lesbians aren't working out, perhaps there's another way. Channeling shades of Hello My Future Girlfriend, there was a section of Pixieland.org where Randy laid out what he was looking for. So, are you really Tinkerbell? Randy's approach was that he was going to completely be himself up front. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's not going to hide his desires, and if you see this and you're still game, he's your man. That would make him a happy pixie boy. What was Randy looking for? Only women. One that's not worried about what society thinks. One who will love and not just tolerate Randy's interests. But the biggest thing if you want to be Tink, you have to share Randy's faith. That's right, you might be surprised to hear that Randy is actually a devout Christian. When he said that God loved him just the way he was, you might have thought that was a figure of speech, but he meant exactly what he said. In fact, in addition to the Peter Pan site, Randy also ran his own ministry website called the Through the Cracks Ministry, dedicated to people who've been shut out by religion and have fallen through the cracks. He says that his hero, in addition to Barack Obama and his father Roy, is Jesus Christ. The real one, not the one that religion created. And spreading his faith was part of the reason why he was okay with being on shows that he knew were going to make jokes at his expense, because he's still getting out there and spreading his message. Knowing that many of his followers may be skeptical, he said, "Find out for yourself if God is real, and either way leave the question open to a greater influence, just in case you're wrong." The ministry website would receive a lot of emails, which he'd respond to publicly, and he'd sort them into 3 categories: spiritual people frustrated by organized religion, like Randy himself, people wanting to debate, and people who are suffering. Randy's approach was to embrace outsiders through his ministry, a way to bring others like him to Jesus, feeling that the church pushes non-traditional people away by making them feel like rebels or perverts. We're one big happy family, even that silly cousin Devi's brother who wears a house dress in the kingdom of God. He doesn't believe that God would judge, only humans do that. And although the parameters of Randy's dating profile were very specific, a practical smorgasbord of ladies applied looking to be his tink. According to interviews, he had heard from over 400 would-be Tinkerbells from all over the spectrum. Following this, his dating life would experience a number of ups and downs, including seeing another internet celebrity named Kim from the website iskip.com, and there was another woman he'd speak about on his website who'd later request that he removes any mention of her, something he'd take as a lesson learned. Despite the hundreds of emails he'd receive, he'd ultimately meet his match in person. In the summer of 2006, August 13th, Randy met a woman named Dorothy at a place called the Suncoast Resort. Dorothy, as you may be surprised to hear, wasn't the owner of many whimsical outfits, so she'd borrow some of his and soon amass a collection of her own. The couple that makes pixie skirts together stays together. And then on October 7th, Randy would propose at their favorite club, The Castle in Ybor City, a venue that Randy loves so much that he's written a song about it. I've actually been to this club, and it really does rule. Like when I've been there, downstairs it was more of like a chill goth music vibe, and then upstairs was heavier industrial stuff. Believe it or not, the person who put me onto this place was BG Cumby, not the first guy you'd expect to run into at a goth club. Princess Dorothy and Sire Randy were wed at the Bay Area Renaissance Fair in Tampa, Sunday the 29th day of March, in the year of our Lord 2009. I love when weddings are themed around the couple's special interests, and they went all in. They recreate the slipper fitting scene from Cinderella, the officiator was a King Henry VIII impersonator, and in addition to their vows, they recited Led Zeppelin lyrics. People came from all over the country to witness the event. Esteemed guests included fairies, Lost Boys, even Batman made an appearance. Their relationship would later be featured on WeTV's Secret Lives of Women Unexpected Love. You know what? Looks like the search for Tink worked like a charm. From 2011 on, the news updates would be more sparse on the website. He'd make a Facebook page to stave off imposters and keep in touch with his fans. It was also the last year that he would solicit donations for kids' charities. In 2014, he would celebrate his 6th birthday. He announced that he would also possibly be retiring, not as Peter Pan, but as an engineer. He wanted to spend his later years focusing on things that actually meant something to him, particularly his wife and his music, and he even began to offer guitar lessons. In 2020, he'd update his page to let us know that the Web 1.0 style was staying. He would, however, be spending time making sure that the page was as readable as possible on as many different devices as possible. And then he made his most recent update on March 28th of 2025. An update that was very much looking towards the future. A few songs at a time, I'm gradually putting all my original music on all the streaming services. This includes things like Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, YouTube, and dozens of other places that my distribution service, CD Baby, offers. You can find me by searching your favorite music services for Randy Constant Peter Pan. I am doing this for the sole purpose of legacy. Whether or not I look my age, I obviously don't act it. I am over 70 years old as I write this update, and I won't be on this planet forever. When I'm gone, the bills for website hosting won't be paid, and pixieland.org will cease to exist. I doubt anyone buying the domain will do anything magical with it. So at least, hopefully, unless CD Baby's policies change, music distributed through them will remain available forever. And if you look at the various streaming services, you'll see that Randy continues to upload music. In my conversation with Randy, he actually told me that on November 11th, he'll be releasing a remaster of his song Who is Peter Pan. The website remains the best place to get his music, but it should be available on all streaming services after. Now, way back in 2004, Conan O'Brien asked him a very interesting question.
So when you're 70 years old, will you still be Peter
If you would
Pan?
have asked me that, will I be doing this 20 years from now, 20 years before, I might have said, gee, I don't know if I'll still be able to do it, but
Right.
here I am.
Right.
So I hope I can still do it at 70.
And after having spoken to Randy, I got my answer. He told me that YouTube blocked this video because there was a Beatles song that appeared in the background, but it's still available on his website. In 2023, Randy celebrated his 7th birthday. His wife had organized a surprise party. He had no idea it was happening, and here he is. 70 years old and still Peter Pan. And I guess the whole like staying young forever Peter Pan thing worked because I mean, this is a 70-year-old man. Look at his skin. I honestly never expected this story to be as motivational as I found it. You know, I started on this, I was like, hey, you remember that weird guy from the old internet? Bet he's up to something weird. But instead, we got this guy who just simply wanted to live his life exactly as he felt like it. He wanted to be the person he actually was. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that, especially in this day and age. They're worried about the consequences or about being ostracized. But here you have Randy at 7 years old, surrounded by his friends and loved ones who share his values. He's proof positive that you really can just be the person you want to be, and you'll be fine.
I don't see myself ever giving up being Peter Pan. It's the way I choose to live my life, and I'm having a ball.
But anyway, that's all for now. If you like this video, turn on notifications, and check out my video about Hello, My Future Girlfriend. I'm out.